On today's Locked On Giants podcast, Brandon Olsen joins us from Mobile, Alabama, site of the annual Senior Bowl, and he's got some scouting reports, Giants related tidbits for us. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase letters to win $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Chaina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all our written work over there. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And joining me on today's Locked On Giants podcast from Mobile, Alabama, on his phone, which is why maybe the connection's a little shaky if you're watching on video, is Brandon Olsen, who is Locked On Gators. He's also a contributor to New York Giants on SI. So he is down there doing a little scouting work, on behalf of Giant fans, writing up some notes. You can find his reports on New York Giants on SI. And Brandon, let's get the scoop here. Now, obviously, the quarterbacks are the main guys, I should say, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, not taking part in this, but some other quarterbacks are taking part in the Senior Bowl. What have you observed? Who's jumped out at you so far?
You know who's made themselves a lot of money today or this week? Cam Ward, by not being here. The quarterbacks here are lackluster. We'll say that there's been quite a few fumble issues. We've seen quite a few pass catchers just get a messy ball thrown their way, and this is probably the first Senior Bowl where I can say I feel like quarterback play has genuinely hurt the quality that we're getting. It's not pretty. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish I could be like, oh yeah, all these guys are playing so well. It's not pretty right now at all right now for quarterback play, and usually they get better as the week goes on, which today was a better day than yesterday. They're improving, but it's still not pretty at all. I do think that we've seen some fumble issues from guys like Jackson Dart, who the first day of practice had 3 fumbles, and it was like cleaned it up day 2, but it's just not pretty quarterback play right now, and it's not usually great, not usually this bad. And so I think Cam Ward, by not being here, definitely helping himself make some money and kind of solidify himself, because yeah, it was Cam and Shedeur may have helped himself a little bit, but Cam not being here, you really get to look at a guy like Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. You kind of look at them and say, all right, well, Cam is head and shoulders ahead of them right now. So Cam, I think, is solidifying himself as QB1 without even needing to be here.
Interesting. Now, how's that affecting, though, the rest of the players, the receivers, the offensive line, the running backs? I mean, or is it affecting them?
I think it's affecting the receivers. But also, if you're getting a bad ball thrown to you, you could still come up and make a play on it. You get help from that. You're not getting the easy catches right now that you usually see, where oftentimes you see, oh yeah, receiver makes a cut, ball's right there, he gets to catch it and make a big run after catch there. You're not getting too much of that, but you are getting guys that are being able to make tough catches. Ball's behind you while you're running straight, and you come up and make the play that, maybe you shouldn't have been able to make. But you did. Offensive line, just as a complete unit, they've been just popping. Like, trench warfare has been the big selling point of the Senior Bowl this year. Everybody came down here and they're like, oh, the trenches are what we're looking at. And the trenches have just been really freaking good so far. They've been the big selling point. They've been what pops off. So while quarterback play is down, trench play way up.
All right, well, let's look at the trenches then, because the Giants obviously need help, offensive line, defensive line. Who are some of the guys that have just made themselves some money so far this week?
I think Mike Green from Marshall made himself a lot of money, the edge rusher there. His big question mark coming into this Senior Bowl week was, hey, he's a little light. How is he going to adapt to that? And then he came in, weighed in more than people thought he would. And when he weighed in heavier than people thought he would, they went, well, how is that going to impact his movement? Turns out not at all. He still just moves like a maniac. Fantastic bend around the edge. Explosive first step. Like he's making himself. He's probably adding a comma to his salary for 2025. He's definitely helping himself. Adding a zero if he was already making over $1 million in 2025. But he's definitely helping himself to a lot of money this week as dominate off the edge.
Are there any guys that have so far, and I know we're only a couple days in, but are there any guys that have surprised you that maybe weren't on your radar that made you say, whoa, I got to pay more attention to this guy?
Honestly, one of the names that popped out to me was someone that I have seen plenty of with Florida Gators defensive tackle Cam Jackson. I came in here and I was just like, okay, he's going to do his usual, like, I can stop the run. I'm not going to present much of a, we'll say, not going to present much of a threat as a pass rusher. But he came out and he's won the battles he's supposed to win. He's won a few battles that he's not supposed to win. He's making some plays here. He also had the very weird occurrence of, you know how you see a college player and it's like, oh yeah, he's listed as 6'2", probably 6'1", maybe 6'1 and a quarter. Cam Jackson was listed as 6'6" and weighed in at the Senior Bowl at 6'6 and a half, so he's taller and he's also about 20 pounds lighter than he was initially listed as. And he's playing really well at that size, and the fact that he's able to do that, going to help him make some money. I don't think he's going to be anything earlier than a mid-late day 3 pick, so because he's been in college for a long time, plays nose tackle, which isn't exactly a valued position right now, but he's making himself some money as, hey, maybe I could do more than just being a nose tackle. Maybe I could slide out, play 3 tech a little bit, and make some money there as a pass rusher, where Florida, he didn't. Plenty of experience watching him. Was never impressive. Now, it looks a bit better.
Brandon, one of the benefits of being down there is you get to see the interaction between the GMs, the coaches, and so on and so forth. Have you seen the Giants brass, any member of the Giants brass maybe spending a little extra time with a particular player, or maybe Joe Shane's powwowing with another GM? Have you had any scoops like that?
No sighting of Joe Shane yet, from my part at least. Did see Brian Dable yesterday, so I know he was here just watching practice, walking around for it. We did see Joel Thomas was spending a lot of time with, unsurprisingly, the running backs. Who would have thought that would? Mike Kafka spent some time with quarterbacks, was kind of the groups that he was working with mostly. He was just like a QBs, and really, it seemed like he was taking additional time just out of his practice period to just kind of say, hey, like these, like you got to get these details down. It looked like he was really just trying to focus in. You could see him kind of bring his hand down, like he was trying to say, like, calm down a little bit. And he was working on the quarterback running back exchange as well yesterday. Spent quite a bit of time doing that. And look, he's been someone that, again, he's been more of an active coach than we usually see from guys. And I think that's probably helped the Giants if they're doing any quarterback evaluating. That's probably helping, which of course they are. Then Mike Kafka's presence and attention to detail is definitely helping him with that one.
This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. If you are waiting and wondering and worrying if you are going to get any money back on your taxes, worry no more. Get matched with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. Your TurboTax expert will give your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. Your expert will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. That's how taxes are supposed to be. So go on and get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantee. All right, Brandon, let's talk about, just moving forward, the expectations. Um, what's on tap for day 3 of the Senior Bowl? Is there a particular drill that you're looking forward to seeing, or a position group that maybe you haven't seen yet that you really want to hone in on?
Day 3, I'm looking more at the wide receivers and defensive backs. Spent most of the first day watching the trenches, most of the second day watching linebackers, running backs. And day 3, I'm looking more for receivers and DBs. I feel like day 3, we usually see coaches kind of try to make it more fun. That's kind of when they're like, okay, like you guys know as much as you're ever going to know for these practices of our very simplified playbooks. This is your last time to really get chemistry, because there's going to be a bunch of players who have a strong day 3 of practice and then say, you know what, I'm not going to play in the bowl game because it's full disclosure, complete honesty. There's not much value for the Senior Bowl game itself. It's the practices that matter. You get to see people work out individually and how they interact with others. But in the actual Senior Bowl game itself, it's not like these guys have developed a scheme. It's not like they have any of a playbook that's really set up. And so you're not really watching guys play a football game. It kind of feels like a preseason. And so for me, I think the practices are more important. And day 3, we usually see coaches try to just make it a little bit more fun. They try to be loose with guys, try to get them moving, try to get them active. We usually see a couple guys who really lean into, hey, this is my last chance to impress. Grant Stewart, a few years ago out of Houston, was a guy that on day 3, I remember he just started screaming down on kickoff, as in legitimately screaming, like yelling at the top of his lungs while he was running down on kickoff. And a lot of guys were like, okay, that's a guy I'm going to notice. And then the Bucs drafted him eventually. He's still around as mostly a special teamer and rotational defensive player. But having an impact like that, making literal noise like that, is kind of where you can pop off. Like we had Auburn linebacker Eugene Asante today. He made a great play, and then he yelled something that we're not allowed to repeat on air. But he made a play and he yelled, "I do this S word," and everyone heard him. Everyone heard the hit. Like everyone loved it. And so Eugene DeSante is a guy that popped out to me today, and part of that was just the energy and the intensity that he brought. Not so much he had a good day of practice, but it was that energy and intensity that we hadn't really seen from him before. There hasn't been a ton of that just at these practices yet. And so for Eugene Asante to be kind of the first guy to break that out was pretty impressive there.
You had the Shrine Bowl that's going on simultaneously this week, but based on what you've kind of observed from the Shrine Bowl, and I'm sure you've been tuning in on that, what you've seen so far in the Senior Bowl, who's kind of raised their stock and whose stock has dropped as far as individuals that maybe were on the Giants' radar?
I think that North Dakota State offensive lineman, I almost called him offensive tackle, and I'm like, well, he played everything. Gray Zabel is someone that has really popped. I know that it's unfortunate that we have the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl now overlapping, because a few years ago it used to be, hey, the Shrine Bowl was the week before the Senior Bowl, and then the Senior Bowl would call players up from the Shrine Bowl, and so you'd be able to impress there as well. But Gray Zabel from North Dakota State has been someone that's popped out in both Senior Bowl practices so far. And it's always interesting because when you have a small school guy, North Dakota State, they're not playing an SEC schedule every week. They're not playing a Big Ten schedule every week where trench warfare is kind of maximized and emphasized. But you're playing North Dakota State. And so when you dominated that level, you then bring the next question of, well, can you do it against Power 4 talent? Can you do it against NFL talent? And Gray Zabel's just done it against Power 4 talent, Group of 5 talent, HBCU talent. He's done it against future NFL talent, potential first-round pick talent. He's been dominant. And the fact that he could play all 5 spots on the offensive line, has played significant time at all 5 spots. And this week, he's been mostly practicing on the interior. That's probably where he projects long-term, and so that's why NFL teams will be looking for that. But he's someone that has popped a lot. And I think that these small school guys getting the opportunity to compete against elite talent is exactly where they benefit.
Brandon, a lot of people are like quarterback or bust for the Giants at number 3. If they can't get a quarterback, Travis Hunter. That being said, is there, another candidate? I mean, I know Abdul Carter has been mentioned. I know Will Johnson has been mentioned. What's your early take on the Giants and what they might do there at 3 if both quarterbacks are off the board? Do they trade down to, you think, does it make sense based on what you've seen? Is there enough talent where if they move down a few spots that they'll still get a good guy?
I think so. I think that you can move down probably somewhere between 5 and 6 spots, accumulate an extra day 2, day 3 picks, and still be able to add talent early at the top of the draft. I think the draft talent kind of falls off around the early teens. I think it takes a big steep drop there. So if you can get anywhere before then, so get a quality player, accumulate more picks. I think this draft, people talk about it as a bad draft, but that's just, in my opinion, inaccurate. I don't think it's a bad draft at all. I think it's a draft that is very light at the top, but I think that once you talk about depth, middle round, day 3 guys that are going to contribute, I think you're looking at a lot of them this year. So while, yeah, there might not be as many bona fide all-pro players, there's still a lot of talent in this draft. So if trading down gets you extra picks to add more of that talent to your roster, I think that you have to, at the very least, entertain it. If both quarterbacks are gone or not, I think you should entertain the trade down option.
Lance Zierlein of NFL.com had an interesting theory about quarterbacks. He said because in the first round you can exercise an option year, that may push some of these quarterbacks that are currently projected in the second round into the first round. Have you seen anybody, and I know you said that the quarterbacks, so far this week haven't looked that great, but you've also done some additional film work and study on these guys. Is there anybody that you think maybe you could see getting pushed into the first round where the Giants maybe trade back into the bottom of the first round for that quarterback to take advantage of a 50-year option?
I do think that the most likely scenario there would be someone like Jackson Dart. I think that he's going to do well with interviews. I think that he's got the physical traits. And look, he may be having a rough, or every quarterback may be having a pretty rough Senior Bowl, but it's a grain of salt. There's an old saying that is, or not even an old saying, but there's a saying around the Senior Bowl that is, you can't hurt your stock here. You can help it because you're not put in great favorable situations. You don't know anybody that you're working with. You don't know anybody that you're working against. So you're not put in favorable situations. But you can't hurt yourself here, but you can help yourself. And so even if Jackson Dart, Jane, or other guys are having days passing, they're also throwing to guys that they were thrown to. I don't know how fast this receiver is. I can't lead him properly. Like, with things like that, I think Jackson Dart's the most likely one, though, because I think his film is better than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think that with interviews and everything, people look at him as a second rounder anyway. And then you add the little quarterback tax to it. And you could talk, hey, end of first round, I get him for 5th year, if not longer, because after that, you can then also franchise tag him and keep extending that one a little more. I think that Jackson Dart would be the most likely guy. I know that people will also suggest Jalen Milroe. Highly doubt that. I think Jalen Milroe, where he lost the most, was probably with the measurements, which would have came out at the combine anyway, but small hands and fumbling issues. I do think that teams will overlook small things. Kenny Pickett was a first-round pick, and that shouldn't have happened at all. But teams will overlook small hands. If you have small hands and you fumble, though, they're really not going to like that, and especially when you have the accuracy inconsistencies of Jalen Milroe, I don't think that he's going to be a name that people will bring up with legitimacy. I think Jackson Dart being out.
Hey, Giant fans, if you love going to live events, you're going to need to check out Game Time. Game Time offers an amazing selection of tickets at competitive prices, and they have made it easier than ever before to get tickets to your favorite events with their Game Time Picks feature, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. That saves you all kinds of time and even some money. Game Time also offers flash deals to save you even more money on select events, and they make the ticket buying experience so easy. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, that's LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue Faithful where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic-free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel where we can talk with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text out exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate back with me via text one-on-one. So come on and see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code Blue Crew, you will get your first 2 months after your 14-day trial ends at just 50% off the regular monthly price of $4.99. If you don't like the service, cancel before your free 14-day trial ends, and you will owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants. And don't forget to enter that promo code BLUECREW, BLUECREW, at the top of the page to get your 2-month discount. Text and data rates may apply. Please see your carrier's plan for details. So, based on what you know about these quarterbacks, and including the ones that aren't taking part in the Senior Bowl, who's the best fit, do you think, for the Giants and the type of offense they run?
I know that he's not a super popular name, but I do think that Brian Dable could have some fun with a guy like Whit Howard, where you wouldn't have to spend an early round pick on him. I think that he'll be probably somewhere in day 2. Maybe he could be in that conversation as well for be the first rounder. Personally, no. But if you're having the conversation, he would probably be in there. But I do think that Will Howard out of Ohio State, I like the physical tools he's got. You don't have to invest, premium draft capital in him. And that's going to be enticing to some teams that are, like the Giants, talent deficient in many areas. And so you say, hey, well, we'll use our first round pick on corner, edge rusher, whatever it may be. And then later on in the draft, we'll add a guy that we can work and develop and would be at or near the top of the depth chart at quarterback from day one. And I do think that he's got the physical skill set that Brian Dable could have some fun with, getting him moving around out of the pocket, using him as an actual rusher, which I think is underrated from his game. And then if you can channel Will Howard to be what he was during the college football playoff, if he was that all year, he would be way higher in the conversation right now.
You mentioned defensive lineman, which is definitely a need. Is the class as deep as they say it is?
I think it's really deep for rotational players. I think if you're like, hey, day 3, I want to get a guy that's a pure nose tackle, you're going to find that. There's going to be plenty of that. If you want a guy that's going to be more of a pure pass rushing free tech, you're going to find that. If you want someone that's like, hey, he doesn't really have a set position. Maybe he's a defensive end. Maybe he's a defensive tackle. Maybe we can move him around and figure things out. You're going to find all of that. I just don't know if you can look at anyone and say, he's going to make us considerably better. But, I mean, if you could do that, they wouldn't be day 3 picks, right? So I do think that there's a lot of guys that are going to be long-term role players. I just don't think that there's, very well-rounded depth. But if you're looking for a situational role player, special teams contributor, you're going to be able to find that plenty on this area in this draft class.
What about at cornerback? I know last year's class was heavy on slot guys. What does this year's class look like?
I think you got a really good mix this year. I do think that you might have a more aggressive corner class than we've had in quite some time. You look at Azariah Thomas from Florida State. He's probably one of the best press man corners in the draft. Has some technical issues that he has to work out, needs to find his spacing better. But as far as being a press man corner, you might not get better than that outside of course, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson. But when you look after that upper echelon, I do think that you'll be looking at someone like Azariah Thomas, that he's going to make some play. He's going to probably get burnt if he whiffs, but just the physical skill set and being able to play press man coverage right now without being a liability is overlooked, I think, by fans. I think it's easier to teach playing zone coverage and teach those responsibilities and those assignments than it is to teach someone how to play press man on a consistent basis. And I think Azariah Thomas is just one of those guys that could do that properly and consistently. And I do think that this year, you're probably better suited to find guys that are more press man specialists.
What about at receiver? Again, I think last year slot guys were the big rage. And, is there a better mix this year? Because the Giants will probably need another receiver if Darius Slayton leaves in free agency.
Yeah, I do think that you've got a few guys. Like, one name that hasn't been mentioned a ton, if you're talking about an early pick, if some of the top names are gone, would be Ted McMillan from Arizona. I think he's a dude, genetic freak. You just got to figure it out with him. But he's one. But then also, I do think a guy and someone that I've heard has really impressed in interviews, and someone that has really impressed with his play on the field during practice has been Chim Dike, formerly Wisconsin, then Florida. But he's not going to be a guy that you go, hey, that's our future number one. He's going to be, wide receiver 4. I actually spoke to someone today that told me that their plan for Chim Dike, or their expectation for Chim Dike, is there's going to be a wide receiver 4 that can come in and contribute, especially as a blocking receiver. I do think that some guy might look at him and say, I can make him Puka Nacua. He's not physically dominant, but he's a great blocker. But Chim Dike, great blocker, special teams contributor in multiple phases of the game. Someone told me, yeah, wide receiver 4, 10-year special team superstar, though.
All right. Now, final question for you. Based on what you have observed, what position group has surprised you and which one has disappointed you?
I was pretty low on the linebackers coming into this week. And I think that we've had quite a few pop up, like Eugene Asante was one. Nicholas Martin from Oklahoma State is going to be in the practice day 2 report, because I thought he played great. Jeffrey Bassett from Oregon was a freak athlete. It was incredible. He had the fastest time amongst linebackers and running backs in day 1. So just a freak there. And then I think what's disappointed has been tight end. Specifically, they brought in Harold Fenton Jr. from Bowling Green, who, if you're familiar with the name, had 120-something catches, ton of yards. People were arguing, hey, he should win the Mackey Award over Tyler Warren. He has not looked good at all. I don't think that he's got the physical traits to create separation at the NFL level like he did at Bowling Green, which is why you have that question of, hey, you did it at the MAC, but can you do it in the SEC or in the NFL? I don't think Harold Fenton can do it. I think he really, really hurt himself, or not hurt himself, but I think that he didn't impress enough here, because that was his big question, was can you do that? And I think the answer is no. And we haven't had anybody step up, really, other than Elijah Arroyo from Miami. He's been pretty impressive. Great flex tight end option, very athletic. But outside of that, nothing really impressive here. Not even in blocking drills. I haven't been super impressed with what we've seen so far.
All right. Well, it sounds like, it's just getting started. Guys are settling in, and there's a lot more to go, obviously, between the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, then we got the Combine, then the Pro Days. There's so much to cover. Brandon, I appreciate you coming on, giving us the lowdown down there from Mobile, Alabama. He is Brandon Olsen. You can find him on Locked On Gators. You can also find his written stuff on New York Giants on SI, which is where we are covering Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl all week long. So do check that out, as well as here on the Locked On Giants podcast, as we continue to bring you guests who are down at the Shrine Bowl or at the Senior Bowl. So that being said, Giant fans, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank Brandon Olsen for coming on. And Giant fans, we will see you tomorrow.